There is one rule in NASCAR that cannot be appealed, cannot be reviewed, and does not care about your intentions. On Monday morning at Atlanta, that rule collided with Bubba Wallace at nearly 200 miles per hour. He crossed the line second. He left the track 29th. And the man who made the final call told reporters it was all spelled out in the rulebook. But Wallace says the data proves he did nothing wrong, and this is the story of why both sides might actually be right. To understand how this happened, you have to understand the night itself, because this was not a normal race. The Quaker State 400 at EchoPark Speedway in Hampton, Georgia, was scheduled for Sunday night, July 12, 2026. It did not end on Sunday night. Heavy rain and lightning arrived at the 1.54-mile high-banked oval and stopped the race at lap 109, triggering a red flag that lasted more than 3 hours. The race was paused until 11:37 p.m. Eastern Time, and the Quaker State 400, available at Walmart, returned to green flag conditions at 12:01 a.m. After a pit cycle, the checkered flag did not fly until just before 2 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday, July 13th. Fans across the East Coast of the United States were asleep. Many of them woke up to discover they had missed one of the best finishes of the entire 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season and one of its biggest controversies. At the front of the field all night long was Ryan Blaney, the driver of the number 12 team Penske Ford. Blaney started on the pole, swept both stages, and led a dominating 171 of 263 laps. To put that number in perspective, his laps led total on the Atlanta high banks is the most for a race winner at a drafting track since Richard Petty led 184 of 200 laps in his 1964 Daytona 500 victory. It marked Blaney's second win of the season and his first since Phoenix in March. It was also a milestone night for his manufacturer, because Blaney has now earned Ford Motor Company's last 6 NASCAR Cup Series wins, and it marks a significant 750th victory for Ford Motor Company. But while Blaney controlled the race, Bubba Wallace was quietly putting together one of his strongest performances of the year in the number 23-2311 Racing Toyota. Wallace quickly drove through the field and finished 10th in Stage 1. He ran inside the top 5 throughout much of the second half of the race. He even wrestled the lead away from the dominant Team Penske Ford of Ryan Blaney, pacing the field for 11 laps on the night. For a driver fighting to protect his spot in the chase for the championship, everything was trending in the right direction. Then came the first costly moment of the night. Coming to the green and white checkered flag at the end of Stage 2, Wallace threw an aggressive block on his fellow Toyota driver Ty Gibbs of Joe Gibbs Racing. Wallace's car slipped down the track. Gibbs could not slow down in time, and contact from the front bumper of the number 54 sent the number 23 spinning off turn 4. The spin denied Wallace stage points and forced him to mount a comeback in Stage 3. He did exactly that, fighting his way back into the lead pack before the final overtime restart. But the damage between the two Toyota teammates was done, and it would resurface in a much bigger way before the night ended. Now we arrive at the moment everything changed. The race went into overtime, and when the white flag waved, Carson Hocevar of Spire Motorsports was leading in the number 77 Chevrolet, with Ryan Blaney second and Bubba Wallace third. Hocevar, the 23-year-old driver who earned his first career win in April at Talladega Superspeedway, was so confident that he was singing into his team radio just before the overtime green flag flew. But down the backstretch, the picture exploded. Blaney was pushed toward the outside, and Wallace spotted an opening on the inside. He drove the number 23 Toyota to the bottom of the racetrack, and his car dipped below the double yellow line, the boundary that separates the racing surface from the apron at Atlanta, Daytona, and Talladega. Wallace popped back above the line, and suddenly the field was 3 wide for the win. Through turns 3 and 4, Wallace remained alongside the leaders. Then Christopher Bell of Joe Gibbs Racing delivered a massive push to the back bumper of Ryan Blaney, and that shove sent Blaney to victory lane by just 0.068 seconds. Wallace crossed the finish line in second place, 3 wide at the stripe with Bell and Hocevar. Blaney knew exactly who to thank. "Pretty wild," said a smiling Blaney, who started on the pole and swept the stages. "Bubba gave me really good shoves on the restart. We got hooked up really good, and then Bubba and I got a huge run down the front straight away, and I was able to get to the outside of Carson. Wasn't able to clear him. And then Bubba went 3 wide bottom down the back, which lined up for a really cool finish at the line. I really have to shout out Christopher Bell being right on my bumper through 3 and 4, and a big push. He was a big reason why we won the race, so I appreciate that. Christopher." For Bubba Wallace, that happiness lasted for about 30 seconds. NASCAR immediately reviewed the tape. Officials determined that Wallace had advanced his position by going below the double yellow line on the final lap, a violation of Section 8.3.2 of the NASCAR rulebook. The rule reads as follows: if NASCAR determines that a vehicle goes beneath the double-painted lines to improve its position, it will be black flagged. If NASCAR determines that a vehicle forces another vehicle beneath the double-painted lines in an effort to advance its own position, the vehicle may be black flagged. The penalty dropped Wallace from second place all the way down to 29th, making him the last car on the lead lap. Christopher Bell was promoted to second, his 5th runner-up finish of the season, and Carson Hocevar was scored 3rd, followed by Ty Gibbs and Eric Jones of Legacy Motor Club. NASCAR said the penalty alone represented a 27-point swing for Wallace. Wallace did not accept the ruling quietly. His response became the defining quote of the entire weekend. "It says advancing your position, which I did not do," Wallace said. "I stayed 3rd, and I was all over the brakes to make sure I did not advance. As soon as I turned, I was like, I'm going to wreck, and got on the brakes, kept it under me, and still ended up side by side. That move should have propelled me to the lead, and it didn't because I knew it was wrong because my car did not like that move. We'll see what we can do, but I did not advance my position. I stayed 3rd from the entry of turn 3 all until 50 yards away." In his television interview with TNT Sports, Wallace went even deeper into his defense, pointing directly to telemetry evidence. "I turned down and got super loose, so just to keep it straight, I ended up there," said Wallace. "It's unfortunate. You can go back and look at the SMT. I was all over the brakes trying to just get the spot back. It says don't go below the yellow line to gain a position, which I didn't. I was still 3rd, and I got a shove from the 54 to go to 2nd. So, technically, no positions were gained doing that. Again, SMT data shows me try to get it back, but the 54 just shoves us by here." That is the heart of his entire argument. Wallace claims he never actually passed anyone while below the line. He says he braked deliberately to surrender any advantage, and that the only reason he moved from 3rd to 2nd was a push from Ty Gibbs in the final 50 yards before the finish line. In his view, the position change was caused by another car's bumper, not by his own illegal move. Wallace and his team refused to let it go without a fight. Bubba Wallace, crew chief Charles Danicky, and 2311 Racing Performance Director Dave Rogers reviewed video of the finish in the garage, then walked into the NASCAR hauler to meet with officials. The meeting lasted 31 minutes. The penalty stood. When Wallace finally emerged from the hauler, his fight was gone, and he summed up the outcome in 5 words: "A penalty is a penalty." Outside that same hauler, NASCAR Cup Series Managing Director Brad Moran delivered the final word on the matter. Moran said the penalty to the number 23 is not reviewable. Wallace advanced his position below the line, and that it is all spelled out in the rulebook. There is a mechanism for Wallace and his 2311 Racing number 23 team to have filed an immediate petition, But that is different from an appeal. According to Moran, in-race penalties of this kind are considered final, meaning there is no path to overturn the call. The rule that took away Bubba Wallace's finish is a rule that by design cannot be undone. And running underneath all of this is the Ty Gibbs subplot, which turned a penalty story into a Toyota civil war. After the race, Gibbs walked over to Wallace's car, and the two drivers had a tense conversation before going their separate ways. When reporters asked Wallace about it, he made his position on the earlier Stage 2 contact crystal clear. "We'll be fine. He had the opportunity to give there a lot, and he didn't do that. So, when I told him that, he quickly went on the defense and said, 'Don't block,'" Wallace explained. "When you hit me square in the bumper, it means you just ran right into me. The block was clean." Then came the parting shot that his bosses at Toyota will not enjoy hearing. "So, yeah, that's Toyota teammates don't race very well together," Wallace said. Think about the layers of irony here. The same Ty Gibbs who spun Wallace at the end of Stage 2 is the same Ty Gibbs whose push down the front stretch, according to Wallace's own account, shoved the number 23 from third to second, completing the very position change that NASCAR penalized. Wallace tried to give the spot back, and by his telling, a fellow Toyota driver made that impossible. Yet at the same time, it is not Ty Gibbs's job to intentionally lift and compromise his own race just to ensure Wallace can hand back a position. The rulebook simply has no mechanism for that scenario, and that is exactly why this debate refuses to die. Now let us talk about why this penalty matters far beyond one chaotic night in Georgia. The penalty represented a 27-point swing for Wallace, whom entered the race 77 points up and leaves 55 points up. He would have been 82 points above the cut line without the penalty. Wallace now sits 13th in the NASCAR Cup Series standings, and in the overall championship picture, he is 298 points behind points leader Denny Hamlin, who is not just his rival, but his own team co-owner at 23XI Racing. That creates an awkward dynamic inside one building. Hamlin clinched his playoff spot at Atlanta alongside Tyler Reddick, while the organization's other driver spends the week defending a penalty on national television. Wallace understands exactly what this means for the drivers chasing him. "That's massive for us," Wallace said. "Everybody behind us in points is like, oh, 23. They see that and they're licking their chops. The position that we're in, we're not safe. We need to figure out what we need to do moving forward because, again, I did not advance my position. There are 6 races left in the regular season: North Wilkesboro, Indianapolis, Iowa, Richmond, New Hampshire, and Daytona. Only 2 of the 16 playoff spots have been clinched, and that final race at Daytona should terrify everyone on the bubble, because Daytona is a wild card superspeedway where one crash, one surprise winner, or one bad night can erase a 55-point cushion in a matter of hours. If the bubble shrinks over the next month, Wallace will look right back at this brutal Monday morning in Atlanta. So who is right? Let us lay out both cases with the facts. The case for NASCAR is built on consistency. The double yellow line rule exists for safety, stopping drivers from using the flat apron as a passing lane in packs running nearly 200 miles per hour. NASCAR's officiating does not ask why a driver went below the line. It only asks whether the move resulted in a gained position. NASCAR says they viewed it as Wallace advanced his position from third to second by going below the double line. The replay shows the number 23 emerging ahead of Carson Hocevar's number 77 after running low, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. reportedly called the penalty in real time the moment the move happened. As one fan put it bluntly online, if he does not run 7 lanes low, he never gets to this spot. The case for Bubba Wallace rests on intent and circumstance. He was on the brakes trying to surrender the position. He cannot control a teammate shoving him from behind in the final 50 yards. and a split-second reaction in three-wide traffic at nearly 2 a.m. after a rain delay of more than 3 hours is not the same as a calculated dive in clean air. Wallace insists the SMT telemetry data will prove he tried to give the spot back. Even neutral observers acknowledged the contradiction. On one hand, NASCAR deserves credit for sticking to the rule as it is written. On the other, it is not Wallace's fault that another driver gave him the very same push he still would have gotten had he not gone below the line to begin with. The fan base split immediately down the middle. One side pointed to the rulebook and said a penalty is a penalty, no different from any other yellow line violation called all season. The other side asked a simple question that echoed across social media. Can someone show me when the number 23 advanced past the number 71? Meanwhile, frustration boiled over about the schedule itself, with fans demanding to know why NASCAR started a race at 7 p.m. with rain in the forecast, then chose to restart it at midnight when most of the country was asleep. So here is where it all lands. Best case for Bubba Wallace. He channels this frustration into a strong string of finishes, protects his 55-point cushion over the next 6 races, and Atlanta becomes a forgotten speed bump on the road to the chase for the championship. Worst case, the bubble tightens. Daytona delivers chaos. Wallace misses the playoffs by fewer than 27 points. And this penalty becomes the single turning point that everyone looks back on when they explain how the 2026 season slipped away from the number 23 team. Bubba Wallace says the data proves he did nothing wrong. NASCAR says the rulebook proves he did. Both of them cannot be right, so now it is your turn. Was this a driver doing everything possible to give a position back and getting punished for a shove he never asked for? Or did Bubba Wallace take a calculated risk below the yellow line, get caught, and now has to live with the consequences? Drop your verdict in the comments, and stay locked in for North Wilkesboro Speedway, where the NASCAR Cup Series runs its first points race at the historic track in 30 years.